let's start with my way too early 2023 rankings at the quarterback position. I go by tiers always, as you guys know, and as you can see here, 1, 2, 3. I don't think you can go wrong. If you want to argue, Patrick Mahomes should be number 1, I'm not going to give you much grief. All of these guys are the guys I would take mid to late round 2 at this point. And I've always been a wait on QB guy, but I think the NFL is evolving and we need to evolve our fantasy strategies with it. And certainly in 2 QB leagues, these guys should be in your, maybe the 1, 2, 3 off the board. No other position should even be thought upon with these 3, with Josh Allen at number 1, Jalen Hurts at number 2, and then Pat Mahomes coming in at 3. Again, organize them however you want. These are the guys that just average routinely 25 to 30 points a game. I mean, Josh Allen himself had 10 of his 16 games finish inside the top 5 fantasy QBs as a weekly performer. These are the guys that consistently give you a head's edge. I do give Allen just the slight edge here over Hurts and Mahomes, given that, back-to-back years in the top 2 fantasy quarterbacks, with 2 of them being number 1. This year, he did fall behind Patrick Mahomes as the number 1 quarterback. Jalen Hurts, in fact, was the number 1 quarterback in points per game. So again, all of these guys are perfectly okay. Whichever one you want to take, you're not going to get much argument or grief from me. I do think they belong after the elite running backs and wide receivers are gone. The top 12 receivers, the top 8 or so running backs, that's when you can really start to consider these guys in your early rounds. A strategy, a philosophy switch that I am abiding to this year. Now, the tier 2, and I honestly, now that I'm looking at this, I almost feel like Fields belongs in another tier himself, given they are bound to upgrade this team significantly in the offseason, the Bears, behind Justin Fields. Biggest upgrades I'm looking for is the offensive line. He was under duress all day, and yes, I know that generates some rushing opportunities, but getting him some more time to throw, and then also some more weaponry. Yes, they traded for Chase Claypool, going to be a big difference maker once he can finally get acclimated to this offense and they get to really figure out how to use him. But he's a good number 2. We need a true alpha for me to truly vaunt Justin Fields into that next tier. But man, we saw multiple, in fact, the most among any QB's 40-point days from Justin Fields. The ceiling is ridiculous. If he was playing this week, he'd probably be breaking. This is week 18 right now. We're going through these rankings. He's going to sit, but he was damn close to breaking Lamar Jackson's rushing record on the year, but he's going to sit this one out. So I think Justin Fields definitely has the upside to approach this top tier. Maybe even emerging like tier 2 by himself, because that rushing upside defines Konami upside, but want to see some line, want to see some weapons upgrades. Right behind him are Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. I keep flip-flopping these guys, and maybe lately I've been feeling better about Burrow, but I just think these are the guys, the middle rounds, 4, 5, and 6, where I'd consider like rounds 5 through 7, where I really take that early plunge. If I miss out on the big 3 at the top, these are the guys you can just lock in, set, and forget yet again in 2023. In tier 3, we start to move into some of the guys that definitely locked in QB1s, but maybe a little bit more question marks here. Moving at number 7, Trevor Lawrence, a big rise over this last year. I mean, he has truly taken that next step, looking like an absolute monster down the stretch run, engineering a Jaguars team that is just scorching hot, likely into the playoffs, depending on how they go against the Titans this week. So I really like this guy because he's now going to get Trevor Lawrence. I mean, you see him wheeling and dealing with Christian Kirk, with Evan Ingram, and now you're going to have Calvin Ridley in 2023 joining this team. A lot of cap space as well for them to continue to beef up the line and add maybe even more weaponry at this point. But Trevor Lawrence, he has that feel of like, and this is how good I think Calvin Ridley is. Reminds me a bit of not as mobile as Jalen Hurts, but that same type of mid-round quarterback, around 6'7", that everybody likes as a breakout, gets that elite wide receiver 1 in Calvin Ridley, assuming he plays, at his disposal, and just takes off to that next level. Him and Doug Peterson have a great rapport. I love what they're building there in Jacksonville, and I love that Trevor Lawrence has finally emerged as that guy that does now look like you couldn't have missed it, number 1, if you had that pick. Trevor Lawrence. Jets, damn. They screwed themselves over that year by winning that one game and missing out on him. Now, Lamar Jackson, he could easily rise much higher than this 8th spot, but he's one of the biggest offseason storylines as a free agent. As mentioned, though, in the preseason, I got so much slack for Lamar Jackson, most overrated quarterback in fantasy. Big take I put out there, and through a couple weeks after 30 and 40-point back-to-back games, I was getting torn through the shredder over that one. But ultimately, the case I made against him, inconsistent, low floor, has a couple booms that make it look good on the year, but ultimately has never been that guy you can truly rely on since that MVP season. And that ultimately came to fruition. Had multiple outside the top 12 games, got hurt, as I mentioned, was a big risk with Lamar Jackson. Landing spot will be a big thing. He's truly had nobody to ever throw to. So if he goes back to Baltimore, would love to see them finally upgrade some weaponry, maybe refresh the scheme. But there's definitely some question marks with Lamar Jackson. Tua, of course, the health's a big risk. Concussion, walking concussion at this point. I mean, prayers up, the guy recovers quickly from the latest one. But if he is in, we saw how dangerous Tua can be with multiple 300-yard games thrown at Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. Largely finished in the top 12. He had a stretch where he went the quarterback 1-4-3 with 29, 24, 23 points. Did get hurt and then slowly tapered off a bit. But we saw Mike McDaniels in him, and these weapons look insane. So love Tua coming into next year. You got Dak Prescott rounding out my top 10 here. Wasn't quite the prolific. I mean, quarterback 1 in back-to-back years in points per game with, of course, that play caller there, Ken, today it's escaping my mind here. Him and Dak had a great relationship. They did get more run balance this year, though, so it wasn't quite that, light up the world Dak Prescott that we had been used to, but he still finished right inside your top 12 fantasy quarterbacks per game, 18.5 on the season. So nice season from Dak, even in a more balanced attack. Still had plenty of top 10 games on the year. Still has good weaponry to throw to. CeeDee Lamb. Maybe they do sign Odell Beckham. And then Kirk Cousins really took that next step this offseason with this Kevin O'Connell system. Much more pass happy. Seemed to be a great marriage. We obviously know Justin Jefferson. If you're tied to Justin Jefferson, that might be a walking 200 yards right there. So we saw Kirk Cousins towards the end of the year, 25, 34, 24. Did have that meltdown against Green Bay last week with only 11 points, but really seemed to find his groove throughout the year. Multiple huge yardage days with this weaponry. So now you have the same play caller. Really, really big fan here of Kirk Cousins. And that kind of wraps up my QB1s. I do have Deshaun Watson coming in at 12. He looked horrendous, but he has never finished outside the top 6 QBs throughout his time in Houston. I do think a big rebound is in order. We saw Jared Goff look great. And then you got some of the bigger questions of the offseason, which is maybe good time here to move in from our way too early QB rankings to our offseason QB storylines here in Trey Lance, Matthew Stafford, Kyler Murray. Big health storylines there. Will Trey Lance regain the number 1 quarterback job in San Francisco? He seems to be the only guy that can operate this offense right here. Matthew Stafford, with Baker Mayfield looking okay, he's gonna risk the back injury that he suffered there. Kyler Murray, his late ACL tear, is that going to be something he can fully recover from ahead of the season? So those are all things we will be monitoring this offseason is the health. We also got to monitor, as mentioned, Lamar Jackson potentially on the move. Where will he land if he leaves Baltimore? As well as Tom Brady, now a free agent, Derek Carr, Jimmy G, Daniel Jones, and Geno Smith, the other free agents entering this offseason. Where will they go? And particularly Daniel Jones, these last few weeks seems to really have come into his own with the Giants. They want to keep him, according to reports. Would be a great fit to stay there, upgrade some weaponry, and see what he can do. So as you can see, all these rankings will again be at rotostreetjournal.com/bigboard. If you want to see everything there. What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.